Welcome back, festival goers. I'm so excited today to introduce you to our next Lightworker Wise Mentor. Takara Shelor helps authors become bestsellers and individuals to undergo profound transformations. Known as the spiritual treasure hunter, I'm sure we'll get to talk a little bit more about that. She's helped thousands of people worldwide discover the diamonds and gold within. Their unique gifts and talents, their intuitive abilities, their passion, purpose, and joy. Takara is a 4-time best-selling author, engineer, alchemist, and mystic. What a cool intersection. Welcome, Takara, to the Lightworkers Festival. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we are going to talk today about what you call the trifecta of transformation. And I know that you actually have some visuals to share with us. So I'm going to turn this over to you, and then we'll come back in a few minutes and really dive a little bit deeper into dialogue with each other.
Sounds great. So the trifecta of transformation. So before we really get into what the trifecta is, I want to talk about why people want to transform their lives or change their lives. Okay. Usually people aren't willing to make big changes until they have a serious problem. And some of those problems are things like they've had it up to here with stress. Maybe they've got financial issues or business issues or relationship or health issues. Maybe they're experiencing pain all the time. Maybe they're just tired of feeling self-doubt, or even dealing with all the trauma drama that just goes on again and again and again in their life. And maybe they're just not feeling loved and honored, accepted, or appreciated by the people around them. Ultimately, it boils down to they're just not happy. And when there's a level of unhappiness achieved, a certain level of unhappiness is achieved, they have the impetus enough to decide they're going to change, and they're willing to take the actions necessary. So some of these things that we do to change are we go to classes, we hire coaches or consultants, we get energy healing done. Maybe we see a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Maybe we start taking a yoga class. Whatever it is, these are the things, these are the ways that we transform our lives because we're unhappy with those other things going on. The things that we want to achieve, the things we're trying to gain by going through transformative processes, is that we're trying to gain inner peace. We're trying to gain more clarity. You know, maybe we don't know our purpose, our life purpose, and we're trying to figure that out. Again, if we have issues with our health or our relationships or, you know, any of those things, we want those to improve, obviously. Sometimes we just want people that accept us for who we are and appreciate us for who we are. And ultimately, we want to sense that who we are matters and what we do in the world makes a difference. We want to be happy, right? We want to be happy. We don't have to be happy all the time, but we want to be happy more than we are at the moment. That's usually what we're gaining or trying to gain when we go through transformative processes. I believe that we're here to master 5 relationships. When I say master, in some cases, it's more like cultivate, right? Improve. Some of those include self, right? Your relationship with yourself. How do you feel about yourself? Do you love yourself, or do you constantly criticize yourself? How about your relationship with your body and how well you take care of the vessel that is housing the divine within, right? There's also the relationship you have with the divine by whatever name you choose to call that. Then there's the relationship with other people, you know, your family, your friends, your coworkers, your boss, whatever all those relationships are, they tend to cause issues, don't they? Then there's relationships with nature, okay? Nature being Mother Gaia herself, also plants and animals in the mineral kingdom. And then finally, the relationship with your own ancestors, with your own lineage, with your own roots. In Western society, we tend to disconnect from these other two, like your ancestors and your lineage and nature. We tend to be fairly disconnected unless we've on purpose done something to reconnect. So a lot of people teach courses and do coaching and all this stuff about those issues, right? Maybe they're a health coach, or maybe they're an energy healer that specializes in helping people with pain. I address things in a completely different way. I work with the person and helping them go from wherever they are to try to attain their highest potential physically and metaphysically. Okay. So I'm known as the spiritual treasure hunter, and we'll get into what that means, but it's about discovering the diamonds and gold within. And I'll talk to you about what I mean by those terms. Before I do all that, I want to show you why I like the analogy of treasure hunting and treasure chests. Imagine you're this person. Maybe you meditate every day. Maybe you don't. It doesn't matter. It's a representation of a person. And she's sitting there. And above her is her own I am presence, or her higher self. It's her access to higher wisdom. And she also has a treasure chest. This also could be a he, obviously. So there's a treasure chest. It's actually within you, okay, but I'm representing it outside. But I believe that we all have unique gifts, skills, and talents. And it's kind of our job, our mandate to bring those forth, to discover them and uncover them and enhance and fine tune them, and then use them in the world to assist humanity and even ourselves. The problem is there's a lot of static. There's interference, both inside of us and outside of us energetically. There's a bunch of different things. In fact, there's 7 different categories that I've identified of what I call hindrances. The reasons we're not happy, the reasons we're not healthy, the reasons that we haven't grown and evolved as a person, we haven't achieved our highest potential physically and metaphysically, because we have all this static, right? If we were tuning in a radio or we were tuning in a television, sometimes there's a blurry image. That's what happens when we have all this other running in the way. There's 9 things internally, the mental subconscious stuff that causes problems for us. I call them the 9 veils of illusion, but I'm going to briefly talk about what they are. And I believe that any issues you face, ultimately, if you distill it down, it falls into one of these categories, okay? So there's fear, there's limiting beliefs, there's judgments, there's expectations, there's attachments to outcomes, and then there's shame, blame, and victimhood. And we all run all of these to some degree. In some areas we might have more fear than we have judgment, or we may have more expectations than we have blame. But these are the things we work on internally. These are the things we try to fix, transform, release, heal, grow beyond, etc. So when we have all that going on, it impacts us physically in our 3-dimensional world, in our relationships and everything else. It affects how we make decisions. It affects every relationship that we have. It definitely impacts our self-confidence and our self-esteem. It impacts our ability to achieve our dreams. Part of that is because we don't feel worthy. And part of that is because we lack the confidence to take the actions necessary to do the things that we need to do in order to achieve the dreams and goals we've set for ourselves. And then also it causes these repeated patterns in our life. We might start a relationship with someone and it's going along great, and then suddenly it's awful. And maybe that's happened again and again and again and again. That's because we've got all these things in our way, these hindrances. It also impacts us metaphysically. So we may hear, we may be clairaudient, we may be clairvoyant, where we see, we may know things internally. But when we have all of this static going on, all these hindrances in the way, sometimes what's being sent from the universe is not how we're interpreting it, right? We're misinterpreting because there's things in the way. So I think there's 3 different things that we need to do in order to work on all of that and make improvements, okay? And I just call it ACT. So one is to ascend in vibration, or rise up. Raising our vibration pulls us up out of the quagmire and allows us to see things more clearly And it also sort of brings to the surface those things that are hidden, those fears and limiting beliefs that we have, but maybe don't even know we have, right? Raising your vibration helps you notice them. Then we need to clear the decks, or the caca, as I like to call it. It's the crap, right? We need to clear out our energy field. We need to clear out what's in our mind and the subconscious. We need to detox physically, because the more you detox, the clearer you are mentally, which is really important. And then finally, we need to do all the things we do to transform, the trauma drama, the 9 bills of illusion, all this inner wounding from, things that have happened in the past, maybe even in past lives that have not been yet addressed. So what starts to happen is you can go from whoever you are now to literally an ascended being, or an ascended master level being, or a guru, or, an avatar. I'm not saying we can do it in one lifetime, and I'm not saying that we can all achieve it necessarily. I mean, it takes concerted work, okay? But I do believe we all have the potential. So if you went from wherever you are now to a more enlightened state, right? In my opinion, what happens is the higher self, instead of being outside of you, actually descends, and you begin to radiate from the divine, right? You become a radiant divine being. You also have, like, your third eye is wide open and just accessing all this cool information that's going on around you, and higher wisdom and all these things. And you also have in your hand, I'm showing healing energy here. The other cool thing is you'll notice that the treasure chest is wide open, right? The treasure chest is wide open. You have access to all your gifts, all your skills, intuitive abilities, all of that. And it just requires that we go through transformation. So this is why I like treasure chests. And these are what I'm saying treasure chest means. Okay. So the diamonds and jewels I liken to your unique gifts and talents. Okay. And your intuitive abilities. So those are what all the gems and diamonds are about. Gold is your healing ability. And again, I believe that all of us have healing abilities naturally that we can utilize if we learn how. Doesn't mean we have to become healers and heal other people, but we can certainly use it for ourselves. And then pearls are these bits of wisdom that we gain along the way. So when we've gone and started doing some of this work to shift, we reach this level I call mastery, or the magnificent self. And the reason I say that is the name of my company is Magnificent You. So I like the magnificent word, okay? But being magnificent, I call being in the noble sea state. And I call it the noble seas because every word I came up with to describe what it's like to be there starts with the letter C. So it makes it easier to understand. So it's being calm, always, no matter what is happening, clear, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, energetically, having that confidence that you need, being divinely connected all the time, being courageous whenever necessary, right? I remember I said something about taking actions toward your goals, or taking actions when they're, sometimes you have to make uncomfortable conversation with someone, right? You have to have those uncomfortable conversations. That takes courage. Not everyone has it, but when you get into this state, you do. You just have the courage to do it. You have the courage to be vulnerable. You're committed typically to ideals even greater than yourself, committed to your goals, committed to your mission in the world. You tend to have greater creativity begin to unfold for you. Then there's a cooperativeness and a collaborativeness that comes on rather than competition. And eventually there's also conscientiousness and courteousness, where you don't become a martyr. You don't not say something because it might hurt someone's feelings, but you become kinder, and you think about how your words and actions are going to impact others. So it's a much less selfish place to be. When we go from normal to noble, we're living at a higher vibration. We're clear, as I mentioned before. And we're also able to notice the subtlest hints from the universe, those little subtle hints that are the key to manifesting. You get into flow with the universe. Manifesting tends to be easier and more gentle and faster. Joy tends to become the more natural state of your being. And the beautiful, beautiful thing is you know where to be, what to do, and what to say pretty much in every now moment. Those are what we're aspiring to, okay? So how do we get there? I call it the trifecta of transformation. And this is a little Venn diagram that explains this, okay? So it's 3 areas that we work on. We work on our vibration, we work raising our vibration, we work on expanding our consciousness and awareness, and we work on becoming more whole. You know, maybe we need a soul retrieval, maybe we're fragmented, maybe we need to heal that stuff from our past. But these are the 3 areas that I believe if we work on all 3 of these, not necessarily simultaneously, you know, we might do one, you might do another, but eventually we come into that mastery or that state of the magnificent self. On the next screen, what I have are what I call the 5 sacred sacraments. And sacraments just means it's a sacred act, okay? These are things that you can do and they impact those top 2 circles in the trifecta of transformation. Okay, so these 5 sacraments are meditation, and I highly suggest that it be in the theta brainwave. Time alone in silence in nature. Exercises that open the channels, the meridians, and activate the chakras. There's 3 of them that I'm aware of. The 5 Tibetan rites, yoga, tai chi, and qigong. Yoga and tai chi and qigong are the 3rd. And then dowsing with the pendulum. In fact, dowsing is one of the fastest way I know to increase and enhance your intuition. And finally, working with energy healing tools like crystals and color and sound and all the other vibrational things that we do, hands-on healing and all the rest. So those are the ways that we enhance the 2 top circles in the trifecta of transformation.
Wonderful. Well, that was just an incredible breakdown, Takara, of, you know, probably the most complete way that I've ever seen anyone talk about the actual tangible ways that we can create this transformation, that we can become our magnificent self. Gosh, I have so many different ideas and questions after, you know,
tell me whatever you want to ask me. Go ahead.
Tapping into that. So, you know, maybe we start with the hindrances, right? So I love that you touched upon these things, and I'm sure that everyone who's listening could really readily identify when we've been in any of those states or multiple of those states are kind of spiraling around. And when we find ourselves caught up in those veils of illusion, what is maybe the quickest way to identify that A, I'm in this cycle, and B, I don't want to be in the cycle anymore. I want to move myself into a higher vibration. What have you noticed about that?
So one thing I'll say about the easiest way to know if you're running one of those, you're upset. You're either angry or you're sad. Something's triggered you, okay? So when something triggers us, it's because one of those is running. One of those things in the subconscious of fear, limiting belief, something is flared. And when it's flared, when we're upset, that's the easiest time to get rid of it. You know, when it's hidden and when it's buried, when it's sitting there and we're not aware of it, it's really hard to dig up. You know, it takes a lot of effort. But when it's on the surface, it's almost impossible not to get rid of it, you know, but you have to stop and notice. So one of the tools I love is journaling. You know, when you're upset, just have a journal and write how you're feeling, and then try to go into, why am I feeling this way? And those 5 things, you know, you can meditate, you can spend time in nature, you can, one of the greatest things in the world, depending on the weather and where you live and all that, but go outside, sit on the ground, put your back against a tree and journal there, right? So you're being fed by nature and you're communing with nature. And by sitting on the ground, you're grounding, you know, or you can, you know, I can't even tell you how many crystals sitting around me, right? I have them all over my desk. And you know, you can grab a crystal, it will change your vibration. And each one does a different thing. And you know, heck, I've got a cool stick I picked up one time. I just think this is the coolest little stick, and I'll just hold it. And I don't know why it makes me feel so good, but it does, right? Because I'm clear sentient. So I feel all the vibrations everywhere. So I'm very in tune with that sort of thing. But you just find things that make you feel better. But when you journal about it, you are you're acknowledging it. You're acknowledging that that it's not working. Something's up. You're acknowledging it. You're taking the time to stop instead of making yourself wrong and trying to put it aside. You're going, oh, I'm going to give you some attention. Let's figure out where this comes from and let's try to work through it. Sometimes you can just work through it by just journaling. Other times you need to do, some sort of process, or you need to get a little help from some professional, energy healer or someone.
Yeah. Well, and for me, journaling is really powerful for me. And when I am, say, angry, which can happen sometimes, I just write whatever is in my mind. Like, I don't censor it at all.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it feels like really icky as a light worker, as an empath, like that's really bad. I shouldn't be feeling that way. It's real. It's coming through. And like you're saying, it's just like this purging process, right? We talked about that sort of cleansing that we need to do.
Right. Right. And when you give it voice, you don't even have to speak it. If you're giving it voice by writing it, it is a release process, I remember when 15 years after I was raped, I remembered I'd been raped. So it was 15 years. And all of a sudden, I'm going through rage and I'm going through fear and I'm anger and sad and like going through all these emotions. And when I look back at my journal, because that's when I learned to journal. So, I was seeing a psychologist. And when I learned to journal, I look at the pages, not that I do it very often, but every now and then, and it's amazing just how choppy the writing was. I was so angry. It changed my writing style.
Yeah.
It was fascinating.
Yeah. And allowing for that
Yeah.
pain to come out before we speak it, before we, turn that wounding and hurt on other people, which we see happening a lot in our world. People who aren't aware, who are not cultivating that compassionate self-observer, are sort of acting from that woundedness. And I think probably every person on this festival has done that at one time or another when we were unconscious of it. And this is a way for us to constructively release things that can be really, really difficult, like what you experienced, and begin that healing journey. I would love for you to talk a little bit more about one of the aspects. You had 5 aspects that you presented, and let's talk a little bit about the ancestors, because, that is such a powerful influence on this. Sometimes we understand the influence of it, and sometimes we don't.
It is amazing. Actually, so much has come to me. I bring in information, I ask questions and I get downloads and I write a lot. And I've really been kind of led to understand just how important it is. But I've had this beautiful, great, good fortune. I ran a shamanic healing center in Santa Fe, New Mexico for a while. And I became really close friends with a whole lot of Native Americans from many different traditions. We also used to fly in people from Mongolia and from South America and all these shaman and wise people, and something you'll notice about Native people, indigenous people, is that there's a solidness. There's a calmness and a solidness. They know who they are. They know who they are. And part of that is because they're deeply connected to the earth and the land and their people. But when they talk about walking with their ancestors, they really are, like if you tune in, clairvoyantly, I'm trying to find the word, when you try, tune in clairvoyantly, you can see just legions following them. Like they are walking in the world with their ancestors walking with them. And sadly, in Western society, like I said, we've disconnected from nature and we've disconnected from our ancestors. Christianity had a lot to do with that, right? Because in Christianity, and I'm not poo-pooing the religion, I'm just saying this is what happened over time. A lot of us, you and I both have similar colored skin. Therefore, we probably came from Europe somewhere, right? Right. So our ancestors from Europe somewhere had certain practices. They had certain rituals. They had certain beliefs. But when Christianity came through and forced them to convert to Christianity, they sort of hijacked the ancestry because people started looking at the Old Testament as their own history. Like they came out of the Middle East. Well, my people didn't come out of the Middle East, and there's nothing wrong with that lineage I have. It's amazing how many Jewish clients I have, it's really, I find it fascinating. And Jewish people, they also know who they are. right? They've kept their lineage. They know their ancestors. They have stories that they've told and rituals that they still do. I mean, they have very rich celebrations, and we've sort of lost a lot of that. So, when you start getting back in touch with your ancestors and you start, actively asking for them to be present, you light a candle, just like you'd call in, angels. You light a candle and you just ask for your ancestors to come in and that you want to gain that relationship again. It's amazing how much more calm you get. It's like, oh, I know who I am now. There's a group that I'm part of on Facebook. It's for like ancient like Norse and that sort of thing. And there's like 200,000 members. There is this massive resurgence of people trying to go back, way back to their roots, because there's something missing in us if we don't have that. Doesn't mean we have to practice all the practices. Doesn't mean we have to get the tattoos and the things. It just means that we need to not cut it off from ourselves. Right. It is part of who we are. It's part of our bloodline. It's part of our lineage.
Yeah. And I appreciate you talking about this. I mean, I was raised in the Christian church and primarily had a pretty good experience. And then I became an atheist for some time and sort of reawakened to be a spiritual seeker. But as you're saying, I've been diving really deep into my ancestry, my Irish ancestry, and really looking at those old ancient practices and symbology. And I feel so much more grounded because and of course, everyone's going to have a different experience because this is a global summit. But as an American, you grow up in sort of American culture, right? You're just sort of Americanized. And it is a blend of things and different traditions and holidays. And although it's not, equitable for all people who are here, but I really felt disconnected. I felt like I had no culture because I didn't, my family was so disconnected from so many generations. And I love what you're bringing is that sometimes we look at our ancestors and go, gosh, I inherited intergenerational trauma, which can be really true. I mean, we can, but there's also positive things that we can draw from that lineage as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to cover was the noble sea state, because this is where we're going. And of course, we're not ever going to be there like perfectly in every single moment.
No. But you can be there more and more and more, know?
Right.
Yeah.
Can you remind us of some of those C's? And I know clarity was one of those.
Being calm, just having inner peace. And no matter what, right? Confident. So you have self-confidence.
Yes.
Right. We are divinely connected all the time. We just don't acknowledge it. We don't realize it. We don't feel it. We don't,
right.
Courageous when we need to be.
Yeah.
Being courteous and compassionate and
collaborative, I think, was one of them as well.
Yes. And bringing in creativity and all of that stuff. Yeah. Somebody was saying to me, like, sometimes someone will tell me they're having a problem and I'll just come back with some words and they're like, wow. And they're like surprised at how easy it can be to just shift into a different perspective. But it's like, when something isn't working, like the computer doesn't work, but you need it to, or the car breaks down, there's a flat tire, whatever there is, those are 2 times when people get very upset. They get very angry because they're supposed to be somewhere and they're, they get all into a frazzle. Yeah. And my take on those moments is, oh, so that's what this moment looks like. Okay.
Right.
Like there's nothing I can do about it. But so instead of spending time and energy and upset, I'm like, okay, I thought I was going to do that, which means I could have expectations or I could be attached to that being the outcome for right now. But instead of doing that, I'm like, okay, I thought it was going to look like that, but it doesn't. So it looks like this. Okay, what should I do now? And just going into that very receptive place of seeking, okay, what next? And then you're just drawn. You just know this, but you can't get that answer if you're upset. You have to be calm in order to do that. And the theta brainwave, doing meditations in a theta brainwave really does help with being able to pull back from emotions.
Yeah. And how do people know when they're in the theta? Like, how can you access that or tap into that on a regular basis?
So, like I have a best-selling book on meditation. So I've studied brainwaves and all this stuff for years and years. And I actually believe that it's almost impossible to achieve without sound.
Hmm.
So the Native American heartbeat, the drum that they do, the Native American heartbeat that they use for shamanic drumming, that is a theta brainwave. Okay.
Mhm.
And there's also tons of music and binaural beats and isochronic tones. And there's all these things you can get. Um, my gift actually uses those things and
Yeah,
gets
let's
people
talk
into a
about
theta
that. It's
brainwave.
just
Yeah.
amazing
So
meditation.
yeah, so I have two guided meditations that it took me 10 years literally to find the music that is behind my voice for these meditations, because it had to get you to theta. That was one of the things I wanted. But this music has real ocean sounds and real whale song, and it also has beautiful music. And buried underneath all that are binaural beats that get you into theta. So you listen to it with headphones and you just follow my voice. There are recordings where there's nobody talking. It can just help you go into a theta brainwave, but you really do have to have support to get there. I believe they've done studies. If you do mantra meditation, which is a sound you're making inside your head, that can also take you into theta.
Right.
So people that do transcendental meditation and stuff, if they're doing their mantra in their mind, that's kind of what they're doing as well.
And oming, will that actually take you into that state as well, or?
I would think so. Like I haven't seen anybody with, hooked up to electrodes where they're checking it, but I would imagine like if you're just doing Om again and again and again, my really good friend of mine is Jonathan Goldman, who's a world-renowned sound healing pioneer. And Jonathan has a lot of recorded music where there is this chanting and some of it is, Om, and it's very transformative. It's very, it really does some
It's really what you're
altering.
talking about, raising your vibration. We're going into these states, whether it's a mantra or oming or listening to the binaural beats, you're inducing a new vibration, a different level into your whole energy system. So yeah, this is amazing. And we will have the link to Takara's Sacred Healing Pool meditation, that's what it's called, with this video. And we'd love to hear where our participants can connect with you after this festival. What's the best place to get connected in with your work and go deeper with you?
Right. So my website is magnificentletteru.com, Magnificent You. And I'm also on Facebook really often. I run a group on there called Magnificent You with Takara. Again, it's the letter U, not Y-O-U. So yeah, those are probably the best ways to get a hold of me.
Wonderful.
My website has hundreds and hundreds of articles, and there's a lot of material there. So
great. Some wonderful resources for people to tap in and go deeper on all of these amazing, systems and structures, clearly that you've channeled through during your time as a spiritual leader and teacher. I'd love for you to just, bring out maybe one more piece of advice or thought or something you'd like to leave our audience with before we wrap up today.
So what's coming to mind is that in order to change, you do have to have a little bit of courage. And so there's no amount of change that'll get you to where you want to be that isn't slightly uncomfortable, right? So it's be willing to take a baby step, even if it's just a baby step, right? But do something tiny to get outside your comfort zone, because the more you do that, the more you can take bigger steps. It's not easy, but that's what's required. And so just find the courage and take the little step, and then you'll go, oh, that wasn't so bad. I promise.
Yeah, the fear of the transformation is sometimes worse than the actual transformation itself.
Totally is. Yeah.
Yeah. And then just one more step and one more step
Right.
until, you really start to open that treasure chest, as you said, of your intuitive gifts, your healing gifts, your pearls of wisdom. Everyone can have these things channeled through them. I just thank you so much for your presence, for this beautiful presentation. You gave us so many things to think about. I know people will probably rewatch this session to like tap into all of the different beautiful elements that you brought forth. We thank you so much for being here and for connecting in the Lightworkers Festival.
It was my honor.